What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel, check out the content. And with that being said, I want to speak on some recent comments that were made about Matt Barnes when he spoke about Doc Rivers and not Doc Rivers and Austin Rivers, right? I think he was on the 520 podcast, and they asked Matt Barnes how good were those Clippers team when he played with the Clippers. They said the Clippers teams were really good. Um, Part of what he thinks held them back was the fact that, like Doc Rivers, he paid Austin Rivers more than what he paid some of the better players on the team. And from the sounds of things, it made it seem like that kind of interrupted the chemistry on the team and kind of really rubbed some of the better players on the team. That kind of rubbed them the wrong way. And I don't know why management allowed that to happen. I know that, like, for instance, the Milwaukee Bucks, they have Giannis and I know they had one of his brothers on there. I'm not sure if they had both his brothers on there. But if you do something like that, like as far as nepotism, and you bring somebody in, then you got to make sure it's going to work. Because if it don't work, then what's happening here is exactly what's going to happen. Like, people are going to call that out because like when you're playing a professional sport and you're trying to get to a championship, everybody they don't get that opportunity to get to the championship, right? And anything that they can hang their hat on and they say that this is what held us back, that's what they're going to bring up. And when it comes to like nepotism and showing favoritism and stuff like that, they're going to do that. They're going to point out like every flaw. Like, a lot of people point to the fact that Doc Rivers he lost the most like 3-1 leads. Like, when he was up 3-1 in the championships, he lost more of those than anybody in NBA history, right? And so that's a stat that's going to count against him as far as his legacy is concerned. And Matt Barnes kind of alluded to that too, right? Because he said they had a lot of talent. The Clippers had a lot of talent, and they traded for Doc Rivers. They bought Doc Rivers in so he can kind of like use his past success and his experience to get them over the hump and get them to the championship and help them to be able to win it. But really, all they got was speeches and an opportunity for Doc Rivers to bring his son in. And so, it sounded like Matt has some resentment because of the way things worked out. They didn't really get to win a championship. So with that being said, I'm going to play Matt Barnes' statement. Then I'm going to come back and give my own commentary on what Matt Barnes had to say.
I think that we were our own worst enemies, bro. And Doc was supposed to be the guy that was supposed to save everything, and then he brought his son over, and it was just some weird energy there, where he paid his son. I'm not even mad. If I was in the position, I'd pay the fuck out of my son too. But like, people don't understand at the time what that did to people. I mean, he was making more than me, Jamal, JJ, like guys that were putting in real minutes.
Who you in person? All right. So it says it was weird energy, right? And he said that he don't blame Matt Barnes said that he don't blame him because he would have did the same thing too. So that just, to me, that's just saying you would have made the same mistake that Doc made. Because like I said, if you want to bring your son in as like they do that in football, like they'll have their sons coaching, but you got to win. Like, this situation, you have to win because people are going to blame nepotism, your fact that you're showing favoritism and nepotism. They're going to blame that as part of your downfall. Like, you see what's going on with what's the guy, Bill Belichick. He always had his son, for years have been a coach with him when he was in New England. Now Bill Belichick is in North Carolina and his son is down there with him too, right? And some of his friends, some people that he feel close to, he brought them in with him. And the situation down there is like people are starting to speak up and talk about nepotism. And then he has a girlfriend that he's seeing. She's down there with him. So these situations where you make it look like you're just hiring people because you're looking out for your family members and friends like that. You got to stay away from those. You got to be all business. And if you don't win, and once you or if you have won and you stop winning, that people, all that stuff will just come to the surface, and everybody will let how they feel about nepotism. Because on these professional teams, your your window of opportunity is not really open all that long. And the Clippers during those times, they had some good teams. They had Chris Paul, DeAndre, Matt Barnes, Blake Griffin. They had those teams was Jamal. What's Jamal last name? I forgot Jamal last name. Crawford. Jamal Crawford, Big Baby Davis. So they had some really good players on that team. They had a good chemistry. And like Matt Barnes said, Doc Rivers was brought in there to get them over the hump, to motivate these guys and encourage them and teach them how to move on to the next level. But once they seen you start bringing in your kids, they think that whatever you're saying, you just blowing smoke, because they see you operating differently than what you're saying. Like you're showing favoritism. If you say one thing and then you show another thing, then you're showing favoritism. And to me, that's not the mark of a great coach. Like when Doc Rivers do stuff like that, it's just not a mark of a great coach. I think Doc Rivers is a good coach, a very good coach, but I don't think he's like one of the greats. And because when you start making those kind of decisions, you kind of expose yourself. And Matt Barnes, let it be known that they thought that they had all the talent. Back, even me looking at the Clippers back then, I thought that they had enough talent to get them all the way to the championship. I don't know who they would have played against back then. I forgot who was, but they had a very good team, a very good team, but they couldn't, everything's got to be right. You got to have the right energy. You got to have that chemistry that's necessary. Like the whole team, everybody got to believe in everybody. And if you don't believe in everybody, then like the chemistry is going to be off. Like some people even say that, like for instance, Chris Paul didn't always get along with Blake Griffin. Chris Paul didn't always get along with DeAndre Jordan. And I said the same thing about Chris Paul when he was in Phoenix. I think that DeAndre Ayton, he kind of took, Monty Williams, in my opinion, allowed Chris Paul to kill the confidence of DeAndre Ayton, because Chris Paul just rode him so hard. When you can't allow your point guard just to drag your role player like that, especially if you need him, like DeAndre Ayton needed more encouragement than he did criticism. But Chris Paul was more so about criticizing than anything. And then Monty, what was Monty last night? I don't know if it was Williams or what, but Monty always backed up Chris Paul and took Chris Paul's side. Whether Chris Paul was right or not, I think the proper thing for Monty to do would be to give more, because DeAndre Ayton was more of a sensitive guy. Same thing with DeAndre Jordan that was at the Clippers. Like, he didn't really like Chris Paul because Chris Paul did a lot of talking and a lot of yapping, and those guys wanted to, they wanted to go after him. And a lot of people don't like Chris Paul, but I think these coaches, they get these they get like they are, they get above, like they think that they are geniuses and stuff like that. When you just can't focus on the stars of the team. You got to manage like these other guys, the role players. You got to manage their attitudes too. Remember, when DeAndre Jordan was at the Clippers, he almost left the Clippers because of Chris Paul. He had signed or was getting ready to sign with the Dallas Mavericks. And at the last hour, they had to have a meeting with him Chris Paul, and I think the coach too, just to get DeAndre to come back. Blake Griffin, I think everybody flew out to DeAndre Jordan house just to have him change his mind because he was going to leave because he didn't like Chris Paul. So when you see a coach like Doc Rivers, you know, he should be able to avoid these kind of situations with his wisdom. But then when you see him bring his kid on and his kid getting paid more than better players, you know, than some of the better players on the team, then that's in the back of their mind. That's something else for them to worry about. That's something else for their team to focus on, and that affects the chemistry of the team. And that's what Matt Barnes was talking about, you know. And you know, he probably didn't want to bring it up, but if you ask other players, they'll probably say the same thing about, you know, that situation with Austin Rivers and Doc Rivers. You know, of course you want to see your kid get paid, but at the expense of other people, they're gonna resent that. And I think Matt Barnes is probably not alone in his resentment for how that situation went down with the Clippers. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, and I will check you all out in the next video. Peace.